Myers Chapter 10 discusses the concept of intelligence and intelligence testing. Exactly how do we determine if somebody's intelligent or not, and how do we test for it? And intelligence is a term that we use a lot. People uh, constantly are referring to somebody who's intelligent or not intelligent, various things like this, but yet it's an extremely difficult concept to define. What do you include in intelligence and what do you not include, and how do you know for sure? So that's what we're going to look at with Chapter 10. Now, there's not any particular definition. I mean, typically we think of intelligence as being defined as the ability to gather or use information in productive ways, but that's only part of it. We can also talk about a variety of other things that goes into intelligence, and maybe even different types of intelligence. For example, couple different psychologists produced these concepts of fluid intelligence and crystallized intelligence. And the idea that fluid intelligence is your ability to solve abstract problems, pick up new info, skills, things like that. Let's say that you're trying to learn some new program on the computer. Some people are extremely good at that, and very able to do that, while others struggle. On the other hand, crystallized intelligence is basically using knowledge that we've learned over time. And so the advantage there would maybe go to somebody who's older. You notice here it says fluid intelligence decreases with age. So, in other words, as we get older and older, our ability to quickly solve problems and to pick up new information and skills, that decreases. But crystallized IQ, facts, figures, knowledge, vocab, things of that nature, increases with age. And research tells us that if you look at the intelligence of a 3-year-old, by about the time that a child is age 3, their IQ can predict their adolescent IQ scores. So, kind of gives us an idea that the first few years are extremely important in terms of developing intelligence. Now, there are four basic theories, or four major theories anyway, of intelligence. We're going to take a look at those very quickly. First of all, Charles Spearman and what he calls the G factor. Spearman tried to break things down, and he used what we call factor analysis. He analyzed a variety of factors in terms of things he believed were related to intelligence. And what he discovered was that virtually all of the things he was researching were relatively prone to be things that we would think of as intelligent. In other words, if a person tended to be good at vocabulary, they tended to be good at other types of tests as well. And so, whatever the test was that he was giving, people tended to have a very high correlation from one test to another. So, Spearman believed that there was basically one generalized intelligence factor, and he refers to that as general intelligence, or the G factor. In other words, if you're good at one subject, you're going to tend to be good at all. Okay? That was Charles Spearman. Now, not everybody believes in this, and we have quite a few others that would totally disagree. For example, Howard Gardner. Howard Gardner, in particular, looked at people who, in some cases, we would believe would be mentally retarded, but yet some mentally retarded people have very specific exceptional skills. They may be really good at doing mathematical calculations, or at music or art. We call them savants. So these people, a lot of times, they may have a very poor overall intelligence, but they may be really, really good at certain things. And this kind of gave Howard Gardner the ammunition that he needed to come up with his theory of multiple intelligences. He believes that there's not just one type of intelligence, that there's many. And he has already introduced 8 different types of intelligences, but he also has a variety of other types as well. I mean, he's basically looking for and or developing a variety of others. But he said that things, for example, as linguistic or logical, mathematical, spatial, musical, all of these are different types of intelligence. So, for example, somebody who's a naturalist has the ability to kind of understand nature and use nature to their advantages. Somebody who's spatially good is able to kind of think through and visualize how things are going to go together and kind of piece things together. They'd be very good, for example, at packing the back end of a car when they're going on vacation, making sure they get as much into a small area as possible. Musical, very obvious. You know, somebody who's really good at writing or understanding various parts of music. So all of those are different types of intelligences. And so Gardner is the leader in terms of believing in multiple intelligences. Now, some of these intelligences are things that we would pretty much always consider to be qualities or factors that we'd look at in terms of intelligence. Some of them are not so much. And so that brings us to Robert Sternberg and what he calls his triarchic theory. And this basically gives the idea that there are 3 types of intelligence. Now, he doesn't go, quite so far as Howard Gardner, but he kind of sums up and comes up with 3 basic types that we look at. One is analytical, and essentially, analytical uh, analytical thinking is kind of the stuff that we test in traditional IQ test. Um, it's the stuff that we tend to ask people to do in school. It's things like comparing, contrasting, analyzing, figuring out cause and effect, that type of thing. And that we tend to, really emphasize that part or that type of intelligence in a school setting. Now, creative intelligence, he believes, is another type, and that's evidenced by people's ways of coming up with insightful or new ways of solving problems, things of that nature. Some people are really creative, some people may not be as creative. I think everybody is creative to some degree, and I think he would say that, but there are some people who are really extremely good in those areas. And then the third type is the practical type of intelligence. Some people would call this common sense or street smarts. Um, this would be somebody who knows how to put together a bake sale or run a fundraising type deal, or even something as simple as getting in a car at the high school and taking off for Indianapolis without a map and being able to get where they need to go. So those are 3 types of intelligence. Now this tends to be very well received today. A lot of people tend to kind of lean toward this particular theory. Currently, Sternberg's actually trying to create a test. Kind of interesting, maybe a little bit too late for you guys to take advantage of, but he's trying to create a test for future students who could take, similar to an SAT or an ACT, they could take a test which would give more or less a more rounded view of their intelligence. Maybe they're not so good at analytical types of things, but maybe they're very creative or very practical. And so he strongly believes that there ought to be some sort of a test out there that can demonstrate those qualities. And he's already in the process of putting something like that together. So I think he's doing more research with it at this point in time. Now, this leads us to the last theory that we're going to look at, and that's Daniel Goleman and the idea of emotional intelligence. Things like interpersonal and intrapersonal intelligences. Interpersonal intelligence is your ability to read other people and relate well to them, to understand them, to kind of empathize with others and to get along well with them, maybe to bring the most out of someone else. It's really neat in terms of like in a classroom or a sports setting or a business, obviously, being able to find a person who brings everybody else up to maybe a higher level of quality that maybe they weren't able to reach on their own. That's interpersonal skills. Intrapersonal is the knowledge of your own self. Being able to understand your own strengths and your own weaknesses. Being able to maybe foresee things that you will be successful at or things that you might not be successful at. And let's face it, that's an intelligence. That is a type of intelligence. Being able to understand that. Now, it's kind of interesting, too, because there have been more than one research study here recently that indicates that emotional intelligence might be a better predictor for future success than IQ. We all know that, there are occasionally people who are extremely smart, very intelligent, but yet they don't always end up being the most successful people. And so there's been a lot of research and stuff correlating people's ability to get along well with others and their future success. So those are four distinct theories about intelligence that we really need to focus on.